when silence speaks louder than screams. The morning sun cast long shadows across the agricultural districts of Haven's Rest, painting the golden wheat fields in shades of amber and bronze that reminded the colonists of Earth's great plains. Children ran between the towering grain stalks, their laughter echoing across the settlement that had become home to 89,000 souls on the distant world of Kepler 442 bits. It was a peaceful morning, the kind that made the colonists forget they were light years from their birth world, the kind that made them believe they had found paradise among the stars. Dr. Elena Vasquez stepped out onto her laboratory's observation deck, breathing in the crisp morning air as she reviewed the latest agricultural reports. The colony had exceeded all expectations in its third year of operation. Crop yields were up 30% from the previous season. The atmospheric processors were running at peak efficiency, and the native ecosystem showed no signs of rejection to human presence. She smiled as she watched her 10-year-old daughter, Maria, chase butterflies through the research gardens, their iridescent wings catching the alien sunlight in ways that still filled Elena with wonder. The communication array on the settlement's eastern edge hummed with its daily data transmission to Earth, sending progress reports, family messages, and scientific discoveries across the void. Today's package included Elena's breakthrough research on indigenous plant proteins that could revolutionize food production, young Timothy Chen's acceptance letter to Earth's prestigious engineering academy, and Maria's drawing of the purple mountains that bordered their valley home. Simple treasures of human life, expanding across the galaxy one settlement at a time. 300 light-years away, in the crystalline command chambers of the Vorthan Empire's Military Intelligence Division, Senior Analyst Cathvar reviewed the intercepted human transmissions with growing disdain. The Vorthans had ruled this sector of the galaxy for over 2 millennia, their crystalline bodies and collective consciousness making them efficient administrators of their vast empire. They viewed organic species as curiosities at best, pests at worst, and these new arrivals from the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star fell firmly into the latter category. "Look at this filth," Cathvar transmitted to his subordinates, his crystalline form pulsing with the deep red of disgust as he displayed the human communications. They contaminate a perfectly good world with their emotional waste, their primitive social structures, their biological inefficiencies. 89,000 of them now, breeding like bacteria in a nutrient solution. His assistant, Nethril, resonated with uncertain frequencies. "The humans have shown remarkable adaptability," Senior Analyst. "Their terraforming techniques are surprisingly sophisticated for such a young species. Perhaps they could be useful as a tributary civilization, managed properly, of course." Cathvar's form blazed with the white-hot fury of a star core. "Useful? These meat sacks are an affront to galactic order. They think with individual minds, act on irrational emotions, and worst of all, they reproduce without central authorization. They are chaos given form, and chaos must be eliminated before it spreads." The decision was made with the cold efficiency that had built the Vorthan Empire. Haven's Rest was classified as a contamination site requiring sterilization. The operation would be swift, clinical, and absolute. 3 Vorthan purification vessels were dispatched with orders to restore the world to its natural state and eliminate the biological contamination that had taken root there. On Haven's Rest, life continued its peaceful rhythm. Elena published her protein research, receiving congratulations from colleagues scattered across human space. The Autumn Harvest Festival was being planned, with families already preparing traditional dishes from Earth and new recipes inspired by local ingredients. The colony school was expanding to accommodate the children born under alien stars, young humans who had never breathed Earth's air but carried its legacy in their hearts. The attack came at dawn on a Tuesday, when most of the colonists were beginning their daily routines. The Vorthan ships materialized in orbit without warning, their stealth technology rendering them invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. There was no communication, no demand for surrender, no opportunity for negotiation. The crystalline beings had decided these humans were vermin, and vermin required extermination, not conversation. The orbital bombardment began with surgical precision. Energy beams lanced down from the heavens, vaporizing the communication array first to prevent any distress signals. The power generation facility disappeared in a pillar of superheated plasma. The atmospheric processors that had made the world breathable were reduced to molten slag. Then came the systematic destruction of every structure, every farm, every trace of human presence. Dr. Elena Vasquez had exactly 47 seconds from the first explosion to reach her daughter. She found Maria in the research garden, staring up at the sky with wide eyes as death rained down from space. Elena wrapped her arms around her child, whispering words of love and comfort that would be their last conversation, their final gift to each other in a universe that had suddenly turned hostile. The bombardment lasted 6 hours and 32 minutes. When it ended, Haven's Rest was a charred wasteland of glass and ash. 89,000 human lives had been reduced to quantum dust, scattered on winds that would eventually carry their remains across continents that would never again know human laughter or dreams or love. Senior analyst Cathfar reviewed the sterilization reports with satisfaction. Contamination eliminated. World restored to natural state. Mission accomplished with 99.7% efficiency. The surviving vegetation and native species would recover within a few decades, and the troublesome human infestation would be forgotten as a minor footnote in galactic history. But something was wrong. Earth had gone silent. For 3 weeks after Haven's Rest's destruction, the human homeworld maintained its regular communication schedules with other colonies, trade partners, and diplomatic contacts. Then, without explanation or warning, the transmission stopped. Not just reduced or delayed, completely terminated. The entire Sol system went dark, as if humanity had simply ceased to exist. The Vorthans initially assumed this was evidence of human weakness, that the species had collapsed upon learning of their colony's fate. Some crystalline philosophers suggested the humans had retreated into hibernation, a defensive mechanism observed in other primitive species when faced with superior civilizations. The silence was interpreted as submission, even surrender. They were catastrophically wrong. Deep in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Admiral Sarah Chen floated in the zero-gravity command center of humanity's most classified facility. Project Prometheus had been theoretical until 3 weeks ago, a contingency that military planners hoped would never be necessary. The destruction of Haven's Rest had changed everything, transforming desperate theory into terrible reality. Final systems check, Chen ordered, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's future. Around her, the best minds of the human species worked at stations that defied conventional physics, manipulating forces that had been purely theoretical until grief and rage had driven them to make the impossible possible. Dr. James Morrison, the project's chief scientist, looked up from his gravitational field calculations with haunted eyes. "Admiral, I have to ask one more time. Are we certain this is the path we want to take? Once we cross this line, there's no going back. We become something different, something that other species will fear." Chen's expression hardened as she thought of Elena Vasquez, of little Maria, of 89,000 human souls reduced to ash by beings who considered them vermin. Dr. Morrison, they killed children. They killed families. They killed hope itself and felt nothing but satisfaction. We tried to be neighbors, to share the stars peacefully. They chose war. Now they'll learn what humans do when our children are threatened. The assembled scientists, engineers, and military personnel worked in grim silence as they prepared humanity's response. They had discovered that when you push humans to their absolute limit, when you threaten everything they hold dear, they don't break. They transcend. They become something that makes the universe itself hold its breath in anticipation of what comes next. The Prometheus fleet was unlike anything that had ever existed in known space. Humanity had taken their greatest weakness, their emotional, irrational, unpredictable nature, and weaponized it in ways that pure logic could never comprehend. While other species advanced through incremental improvements, humans made quantum leaps driven by necessity, desperation, and a love so fierce it could reshape reality itself. As the fleet prepared to depart Sol system for the first time in 3 weeks, Admiral Chen transmitted a message that would be received throughout human space, though it would take years for the full truth of what happened next to be understood. To all human colonies, to every soul carrying Earth's legacy among the stars, Haven's Rest is gone, but not forgotten. Today we begin the long journey to ensure that no human child will ever again be considered expendable by those who mistake our compassion for weakness. The silence ends now. The Vorthan Empire, celebrating what they believed was the end of human expansion, had no idea that silence had not been humanity's surrender. It had been their preparation, and what they had prepared would remake the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to threaten the children of Earth. How humans turned physics into poetry of destruction. The Vorthan home system of Sendera was a monument to crystalline perfection, where 7 worlds orbited their blue giant star in mathematical harmony. For 2,000 years, the crystal cities had grown in precise geometric patterns, their inhabitants living in collective consciousness that prized order above all else. The system's asteroid belts had been cleared decades ago. The planetary orbits had been stabilized through gravitational engineering, and even the stars' solar flares had been regulated to prevent disruptions to their perfect civilization. It was into this realm of absolute order that chaos came calling. The human fleet materialized at the edge of the system, not through hyperspace jumps or wormhole transits, but through something that shouldn't have been possible. They simply appeared, as if reality had been politely asked to step aside and make room for humanity's newest children. 17 ships, each one a masterpiece of engineering that seemed to bend light around their hulls like living shadows given form and purpose. Supreme Controller Zephlin felt the collective consciousness of his species ripple with confusion as the sensor readings poured in. Analysis inconclusive, reported the sensor technicians, their crystalline forms flickering with uncertainty. The vessels register as both matter and energy simultaneously. They appear to be generating gravitational fields that should not be sustainable with their apparent mass. Impossible, Zephlin declared with the absolute certainty that had defined Vorthan leadership for millennia. No species has developed technology beyond our understanding. These readings must be sensor malfunctions caused by solar interference. But the readings were not malfunctions, and the solar interference was about to become the least of their concerns. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, watching the crystalline cities of Sendera Prime sparkle in the distance like diamonds scattered across velvet. Around her, the command crew worked with the quiet efficiency of humans who had transformed their greatest tragedy into their most terrible purpose. The ship's gravity generators hummed with power that drew from sources the Vorthans couldn't even detect, much less comprehend. "Admiral," reported Commander Jackson, the fleet's tactical coordinator, "we're receiving multiple transmission attempts from the Vorthan home fleet. They're demanding identification and explanation for our presence in their space." Chen's smile was thin as a blade's edge. Let them wonder for a moment longer. "Dr. Morrison, status on the Stellar Engineering Array." Dr. James Morrison looked up from his impossible calculations, his face showing the strain of working with forces that existed at the intersection of physics and philosophy. "Gravitational resonance chambers are synchronized across all vessels, Admiral. We can begin stellar manipulation on your command. I still can't quite believe we're about to do this." "Believe it, Doctor. Today, physics learns to serve justice." The Vorthan home fleet, 300 vessels strong and confident in their technological superiority, began advancing on the human ships with the measured precision of a species that had never known defeat. Their crystalline hulls gleamed with energy shields that had turned aside every weapon known to galactic civilization. Their quantum disruption cannons could unmake matter at the subatomic level. They were the pinnacle of military engineering, refined through centuries of conquest. They were also completely obsolete. "This is Supreme Controller Zephlin of the Vorthan Empire," came the transmission, broadcast on frequencies that carried the weight of absolute authority. Unknown vessels, you have entered sovereign Vorthan space without authorization. Identify yourselves immediately, or face the consequences of your intrusion. Admiral Chen activated the response channel, her voice carrying across space with quiet intensity. Supreme Controller, I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Navy. We have come to discuss the recent sterilization of a human colony world designated Haven's Rest. 89,000 of our people were murdered by your forces without provocation or warning. There was a pause. Then Zethlan's response came with the cold indifference that had doomed his species. Ah, the vermin from the contaminated world. That was not murder, Admiral. That was pest control. Your kind was polluting a perfectly ordered world with your chaotic biology and emotional waste. The sterilization was a necessary cleansing operation. The silence that followed was more terrifying than any war cry could have been. Commander Jackson, Chen said quietly, her voice carrying the controlled fury of humanity, pushed beyond all reasonable limits. Please show the Supreme Controller what happens when someone kills our children and calls it pest control. The first demonstration was almost gentle, a whisper of power that reached across space to touch the outermost moon of Sendera 7. The moon, a lifeless rock that had orbited peacefully for millions of years, simply ceased to be. Not destroyed, not shattered. It was unmade at the quantum level, its constituent atoms scattered into component particles that drifted away like cosmic dust on solar winds. The Vorthan fleet stopped advancing. Impossible, Supreme Controller Zethlan transmitted, his crystalline form now pulsing with frequencies that indicated profound shock. No weapon can achieve complete matter dissolution on that scale. Our sensors detected no energy discharge, no projectile, no beam weapon of any kind. That's because you're thinking like conquerors, Admiral Chen replied, her voice carrying the patience of a teacher instructing particularly slow students. You build weapons to destroy what you don't understand. We build tools to reshape reality when someone threatens what we love. The moon wasn't destroyed, Supreme Controller. It was convinced to become something else. Dr. Morrison's hands danced across his control interface, manipulating gravitational fields with the precision of a master pianist. Around the human fleet, space itself began to bend in ways that made veteran Vorthan physicists question their understanding of fundamental forces. The ships weren't moving through space. They were convincing space to move around them. You see, Admiral Chen continued as her fleet approached the heart of the Vorthan system. Your species made a critical error in judgment. You assumed that because we feel emotions, we must be weak. Because we think as individuals, we must be chaotic. Because we love our children, we must be vulnerable. You never considered that love might be the most powerful force in the universe when properly focused. The Vorthan battle fleet opened fire with everything they had. Quantum disruption beams, antimatter torpedoes, gravitational shear weapons that could tear apart planets, all of it focused on the 17 human ships that dared to challenge an empire. The energy discharge was visible from neighboring star systems, a light show that should have vaporized any known vessel. The human ships sailed through the barrage untouched, their hulls drinking in the energy like flowers absorbing sunlight. Your weapons work by imposing your will on matter and energy, Chen explained as her fleet continued its inexorable advance. But will is a human specialty, Supreme Controller. We've had millions of years to perfect it through war, loss, love, and hope. Your collective consciousness is efficient, but it lacks the desperate creativity that comes from knowing you might lose everything you hold dear. Supreme Controller Zethlan watched in growing horror as his most powerful weapons proved completely ineffective. What do you want? He transmitted, the first note of fear entering the Vorthan collective consciousness in recorded history. Justice, Admiral Chen replied simply. You killed 89,000 humans, including children who had never harmed anyone. You did it because you considered us inferior, unworthy of existence. You felt nothing but satisfaction at their deaths. So we're going to teach you what humans feel when someone murders our families. The second demonstration involved the seventh planet of the Sendera system, a gas giant twice the size of Jupiter that had been converted into a massive fuel depot for the Vorthan fleet. Dr. Morrison's gravitational manipulators reached out across millions of kilometers to touch the planet's core, convincing the nuclear fires burning there to burn just a little differently. The gas giant became a star. In the space of 17 minutes, a cold world of methane and hydrogen transformed into a blazing beacon that lit up the entire system. The transformation was so controlled, so precise, that the new star settled into a stable orbit that actually improved the system's gravitational balance. It was destruction and creation merged into a single act of will made manifest. "This is beyond our capabilities," whispered the Vorthan scientists, their collective consciousness reeling from the implications. "They're not using technology as we understand it. They're manipulating fundamental forces through methods we cannot detect or comprehend." Supreme Controller Zeflin tried one final time to assert Vorthan's superiority. "Even if you possess weapons beyond our understanding, you cannot hope to defeat an empire that spans hundreds of systems. Destroy us, and you face the combined might of civilizations you cannot imagine." Admiral Chen's laugh was soft, sad, and absolutely terrifying. "Supreme Controller, you still don't understand. We're not here to conquer your empire. We're here to ensure it never threatens human children again. Dr. Morrison, please show them what we do to species that consider genocide an acceptable pest control method." The final demonstration was elegant in its simplicity and absolute in its finality. The human fleet focused their gravitational manipulators on Sendera Prime's star, that blue giant that had burned steadily for billions of years. They didn't destabilize it or cause it to explode. Instead, they convinced it to collapse in on itself, to become something that existed outside normal spacetime. The star folded inward like a flower closing for the night, taking with it light, gravity, and any possibility of continued existence for the worlds that had depended on it. The Sendera system didn't explode in cosmic violence. It simply stepped out of reality, leaving behind only empty space where an empire's heart had once beaten. The Vorthan fleet found themselves floating in the void where their home star had been, their crystalline forms flickering with frequencies of pure terror as they realized the scope of what had just occurred. In less than an hour, humanity had demonstrated the ability to unmake moons, create stars, and erase entire solar systems from existence. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen to all remaining Vorthan vessels," came the transmission that would be remembered across the galaxy for millennia. "You now understand what happens when someone murders human children and calls it pest control. Your empire's capital system has been removed from this universe as payment for 89,000 lives. Consider this a down payment on the debt you owe." "We surrender," Supreme Controller Zeflin transmitted, his species' collective arrogance finally broken by the reality of facing beings who could rewrite the laws of physics through sheer force of will. "Please, no more. We understand. We will never again harm human colonies." "Good," Admiral Chen replied. "Now you're going to help us deliver a message to every spacefaring civilization in this galaxy. Today, they learn that humanity is no longer asking for permission to exist among the stars. We're informing them of our presence, and we're establishing the consequences of threatening what we protect." The transmission that went out from the empty space where Sendera had once been reached every known civilization within 50 light years. It was simple, clear, and carried the weight of demonstrated power. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Navy, speaking for all humanity scattered among the stars. Today, the Vorthan Empire learned what happens when someone kills human children and considers it acceptable. Their capital system has been removed from existence as payment for the massacre of Haven's Rest colony. Let this serve as notice to all spacefaring civilizations. Humanity will share the galaxy peacefully with those who respect our right to exist. But any species that chooses to threaten human worlds, human families, or human children will discover that we have learned to make physics itself serve justice. We are no longer the weak species you may have dismissed. We are the children of Earth, and we have become something that makes the universe itself hold its breath. Choose your interactions with us accordingly. As the human fleet prepared to depart the empty space where an empire had once ruled, Dr. Morrison looked up from his gravitational field readings with an expression of profound realization. Admiral, do you understand what we've become? We've transcended every limitation that once defined our species. We can reshape reality itself when our families are threatened. Admiral Chen nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting the weight of humanity's transformation. Yes, Doctor, and every species in the galaxy now knows it too. The children of Earth are no longer asking for their place among the stars. We're taking it, and heaven help anyone who stands in our way.
The silence that followed was not the silence of surrender, but the silence of a universe learning to accommodate a species that had discovered how to make love itself into the most powerful force in creation. Humanity had evolved beyond the need to destroy their enemies. They had learned to convince reality that their enemies simply didn't belong in the same universe as human children. And the galaxy would never be the same.